Is my presentation over the considerations for ELL evaluations. The first question asks, what is your professional opinion on how these differences impact assessment approaches in oral language? So, as educators, we must be aware that not all students who speak English pronounce the speech sounds in the same way, or use the same syntax, morphology, or have the same vocabulary. Dialects have differences among the major dimensions of language, which are phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. There could also be word order or vocabulary differences between languages as well. Due to students speaking with dialects or having differences in their language, their oral language is impacted for a couple reasons, and these differences can cause problems regarding administering assessments. The book states that a dialect is not a language disorder, but it can be mistaken for one if the professional conducting the assessment does not recognize its influence on receptive and expressive language. Basically, professionals administering assessments may assume that all students from diverse groups are normal dialect speakers, and they may fail to assess their language competence. And also, professionals may end up overcompensating for dialect and assume that true disorders are dialectical characteristics. And they also may end up undercompensating for dialectical differences for language disorders. The next question asks, what intervention options are available to students who are English learners if they need additional services? There are many options out there for students who are English learners that may need additional services, such as interpreters, having paras, but here are some more specific interventions. Informal procedures are one strategy for the assessment of speakers of dialects. The book recommends collecting spontaneous speech samples in naturalistic settings that can be analyzed for instances of dialectical usage. Sentence repetition is another useful informal technique. These tasks assume that when children are asked to repeat a sentence, they will reconstruct the sentence and say it in their own dialect. Bilingual education programs are another intervention that is designed primarily for students who are English language learners. Bilingual instructional programs contain components such as L1 and content area instruction, cultural context, and English language learning. Language background questionnaires or interviews can be used to gather information from the child's parents about which language or languages are spoken in the home. Having this information can help professionals determine their students' language proficiency. The final question asks, why are students who are culturally or linguistically diverse sometimes over or under identified for special education services? Well, there are a few reasons as to why students who are culturally or linguistically diverse are over or under identified for these services. Many of the language proficiency tests are designed for students whose first language is Spanish and not for any of the other languages. So basically, there is a total lack of assessment tools in languages other than English. According to the book, English language learners received special education services in reading because of inadequate comprehensive assessments. A 2004 study expresses those students who are speakers of languages other than English often are not assessed in their home language during evaluation for special education services. Tests based on English language measures may not have been renormed with speakers of the language in question, and because of this, professionals are forced to make local norms or use the test as an informal measure. But norms that are developed with English speakers are inappropriate for non-English speaking students. When students speak languages other than Spanish, selecting appropriate tools for assessment becomes more difficult, and many times there are no technically adequate measures available in the student's language. So professionals may have to choose to not assess the student or assess with English language measures, but both of these options are unacceptable. The failure to assess may result in inappropriate placement of the student in special education or retention in general education. And lastly, a 2012 study reported that pedagogical coursework in teaching English language learners is lacking in the training of teacher candidates. There is often no appropriate training given to the teachers. It is important to consider an authentic context of instruction and assessment and support language learning.